So, yeah. I never told you what happened after Ethan's birthday party. It was out in the middle of nowhere. Some rental house deep in the woods, far from any town or main road. The kind of place where your phone barely gets a signal, and if something goes wrong, you're on your own. I got drunk out of my mind. The kind of drunk where you think everything's fine, but you're actually one wrong step away from a disaster. At some point, I decided it was time to leave. The party was winding down, and people were either passed out or too wasted to care. I figured I'd head back to town, only about 10 kilometers away. It didn't seem that far. I thought I'd grab a taxi and be back in no time. Wrong. I called a cab service, but they said no drivers were available. I tried another company, and they said the same thing. I kept calling around, frustrated and slurring my words. Finally, one dispatcher said someone would come. I waited outside for a while, pacing back and forth to keep warm, but no one showed up. At this point, my phone was at 5% battery. I texted Clara, letting her know I was trying to get a cab, but having no luck. She sent me another number to call, but as soon as I tried it, my phone died. No more light, no more GPS, just me in the dark road. I stood there for a minute, weighing my options. The house was still loud with music and voices, but I didn't want to go back inside. So, I decided to start walking. I figured I'd eventually hit a main road or a gas station. The walk started fine, but the farther I went, the more isolated it felt. There were no streetlights, no houses, just trees and silence. The only sound was the crunch of snow under my boots. After about 20 minutes, I noticed something odd. There was no sign of life on the road. No distant voices, no lights, just a heavy, unsettling silence that hung in the air. It was eerie. Even on a quiet road, you expect to hear something. Rustling trees, distant animals, maybe even a gust of wind. But there was nothing. That's when I started to get uneasy. I kept walking, my breath visible in the freezing air. The road stretched on endlessly, winding through hills and forests. Every now and then I'd hear something, branches snapping, the rustle of leaves. I told myself it was just animals, but it felt like someone was watching me. Then I saw a light in the distance. Finally, a house. I walked toward it, relieved, but something about it felt off. The house was old, with peeling paint and no cars in the driveway. The only light was a dim porch light, flickering like it hadn't been changed in years. I hesitated at the gate. I didn't want to knock on the door and freak someone out at this hour, so I looked around for an outdoor outlet to charge my phone. There was one on the porch. I walked up the steps, plugged in my phone, and waited for it to power on. As I stood there, I noticed the front door wasn't fully closed. It was slightly open. My phone buzzed to life, but before I could make a call, I heard it. Footsteps. Inside the house. I froze. They weren't hurried footsteps. They were slow and deliberate, like someone was walking toward the door. I quickly unplugged my phone and backed away from the house. Just as I reached the gate, the front door creaked open wider. A man stepped out. He was tall, maybe in his 50s, wearing a jacket that looked too thin for the weather. His face was blank, expressionless. "Are you lost?" he asked, his voice calm. I nodded. "Yeah. I'm trying to get back to town. My phone died and Come inside." The way he said it wasn't a suggestion. It was a command. I shook my head. "No, that's okay. I just need to call a cab." The man stared at me for a moment, then took a step forward. "No one's coming out here." I backed up, gripping my phone. "I'll be fine. Thanks." I turned and started walking down the road, trying not to panic. After a few minutes, I glanced back. The man was still standing there, watching me. I walked faster, my heart pounding. I tried calling a cab, but I couldn't get through. The reception was too weak. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Behind me. I didn't look back. I just kept walking, faster and faster. The footsteps got closer, crunching in the snow. He was following me.